Hi, I'm Joanne Durocher in conversation with Michael Gruzik, who is the Senior Director of News Programming at CBC News. Hello.
Hello, Joanne.
You've been working on the new CBC News daily podcast, and I'm very curious to know, how do you create a daily show about evolving stories?
Well, what we find in everything that we do at CBC News, we touch so many stories across the country, is that we are fantastic storytellers at very quickly taking people into story and telling them what's happening. But we see from the shows that we have that can go in depth that people are really craving a more nuanced, more detailed conversation, because stories aren't always in a headline. They're often in the uncertainty below the headline. And how do we have those conversations and share that with audiences? And what's exciting about podcasting for news is that it gives us a space to respond to the news in a way that I hope isn't us telling people just what happened, but guiding them through what we're curious about what's happened. And you can apply that to any story on any day of the week.
I really like this idea of lingering on the news. Can you tell me a little bit about your editorial process?
Well, we're just starting. The team has just been put together, and even the way we've chosen the team, I think, speaks to the editorial process. We wanted a show that was ideologically open-minded. Now, all news is ideologically open-minded, but we wanted a team that really was curious about different pathways through stories. And I think journalists naturally have very inquisitive and a sharp kind of pathway through around facts and information, and we need that, and we have that, and we provide that. But we were looking for a team that would support an editorial process where when you look at any story on any day of the week, what's curious about that? What do I want to talk to my friend or neighbor about that? Because when you speak to people, you don't speak in facts. You speak in uncertainty. You speak in curiosity. You are kind of tentative about your thinking because you're not sure, how do I feel about Doug Ford's notwithstanding clause decision? I think I know how I feel, but I'm not sure. What more understanding do I need to process and make sense of complicated stories like that? There's a space there, and CBC News feels that we can fill it 5 days a week.
I feel like you're inserting yourself in an existing dialogue that's happening around as news of the day. Is that the feeling?
Well, isn't that our job as public broadcasters, to not tell a conversation, but to capture a conversation? So I hope that when you listen to the podcast, you will hear the host, Jamie Poisson, who's fantastic. You will hear her talking about things and go, I didn't know I wanted to know that. But it was there that you were wondering that question. She's fantastic, and I don't want to put too much pressure on her, but I feel like she's got that curiosity and open-mindedness for us to follow along with her, like she's our smart, good friend who's processing the news with us.
I've seen her speak. I'm really excited to hear her on the show. I'm wondering, how will our audience respond? How do audiences become part of a podcast conversation?
Well, we're going to figure that out because we haven't started yet. And I think that an important thing with anything that we're doing new in content, we've just launched in Snapchat as well. And one of the first things we're doing there is saying, what are we learning about the audience? We're so hungry, and we can learn about the audience very quickly. So we'll be asking, we'll be listening, and I hope that we have our ear to the ground in all the ways that we have available to us. There's no one metric or analytic that's going to tell you here's what the word on the street is. You have to be open to it. So there's no clear answer to that, but I think that's the pressure that we're putting on the podcast team is every day, come on guys, you've got to figure out a way to capture something that speaks to what the conversations are in the cars and the trains and the bikes and the bars of this country, and that's a challenge. They're on 5 days a week, so maybe the Friday edition will capture the thing that I'm talking about with my friends, but the Monday edition will capture the thing that my mother's talking about with her friends. We hope that it takes you in and out of a variety of things that people are curious about.
And so you're seeing the audience then as quite broad, are you?
Well, podcasts have a broad audience. I was just looking at the demographics the other day. People tend to think of podcasting as skewing a little younger, and it does. But we're not intentionally saying that we are focused on an audience in their 20s per se. We know that there's more available audience to us with people who are in their 30s and 40s than our traditional news consumers. How do we speak to the sensibility that they're looking for in news while also welcoming in people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and more? And we have a little bit of a sense of audiences in the sense that, I'll say it, the Daily from the New York Times, everybody asks me the question, so I'll say it. It is the number one most listened to daily news podcast in Canada. I'm so happy for them. But that shows that there's a space for Canadian news. So we're going to be there to give it to them as of this fall.
Picking up on that and wondering when and where will I be able to hear it this fall?
So I believe we're set for the last week of October. We just have decided on the title of the show, and it'll be available through the CBC podcast. We're doing this in association with the fantastic team that is behind a lot of the most successful podcasts that CBC produces. Well, listeners all over the English-speaking world actually are discovering the quality of CBC podcasts. So we hope that within that ecosystem, we find a really exciting new audience that maybe already listens to CBC, maybe doesn't,
I am so thrilled about this project, and I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait for the reveal. So thank you for all your hard work, and thanks so much for the chat.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.